Battle Line Podcast. I can't believe we're on episode 88. We are coming very close to episode 100, and we'll have to do something special for that. But for the new listeners, and I know we've been getting new listeners with guests like Rudy Reyes and all the different episodes we've had up. My name is Ian Scotto.
I am Tonto, Chris Paranto.
Yeah, and every week on this show, every Monday,
why don't you be excited when I say you got to start? You got to
every time I have to get excited.
Come on, Flavor Flav, you got to amp it up. Be the hype man. Come on, hype man.
But yeah, and every week on this show, we interview different members of either the special operations community or people who are somewhat involved in that community, like Alex Hollings, for example, not a special operations veteran, but a Marine and an excellent journalist who has covered things in the special operations community. And occasional guests from outside of that realm. People like Cavino and Rich. We have to do a part two with them when you're actually on. But yeah, before we get into everything, I could tell you I had a great night's sleep. I was completely relaxed, and that was thanks to our friends at Ned. Even though I watched the Islanders lose their second in a row.
Oh no!
And then I played some Mario Golf 64 because that's the only game I play. It's literally the only game I play is Mario Golf 64. But yeah, I took my Ned full spectrum hemp and I felt relaxed. I mean, there's so many great benefits of CBD full spectrum hemp from Ned. Whether you're suffering from post-traumatic stress or having sleeping issues or anxiety or you're having joint pain. I mean, there's so many great benefits. You weren't on for the Benny Glossop episode, but I'll tell you something funny. I mentioned Ned, not just as a shameless plug to Benny during the show, but because he talks about that he suffers from different ailments and different pain in his body. And I said, we got to get you on Ned, man. And it's funny because Benny said, he's like, I'm crazy. I don't like taking anything that's going to affect my mind state. I don't do any of that. And I had to let him know, and hopefully one day he'll get on it, that it really doesn't. I know there's different CBD out now that does, but this is not going to get you high. And if that's what you're looking to do, it's not the product for you. I personally like that it does not get you high. It just, it has subtle effects of relaxing you.
It mellows you out. It gets you online, and it has definitely helped me as part of a healthy lifestyle that I exposed to. I preach, especially someone that hasn't lived a healthy lifestyle, has lived at the edge of my seat for many, many years. Getting back online, especially when I got back home permanently, has been something I've been striving to do, and Ned's been a huge part of that. So, the CBD, but also the immunity blend, which me traveling all the time, I'm all over the place. Even during the pandemic, I was still traveling because you got to work. You got to get out there and still make a living. I never caught a sniffle. I'll be honest, guys, I never did. And not saying that was just Ned, but that was a huge part of it. But just a daily healthy lifestyle, Ned is the huge part of it. To get back physically, you got to get your mind right, and Ned has done that for me. And I will continue to use it forever. Ned's always fantastic. If they have a sale and you miss it by a couple days, just hit them up on their customer service and they'll work with you. That's another thing that's tremendous about Ned is their customer service is second to none. The only one that I could say is even comparable to Ned's customer service is Bubs, which is another sponsor for the show and another thing that we do, another product that we preach for to have a healthy lifestyle. You got Ned's, you're fantastic, got your mind right, and helps get your body right, which leads into Bubs. So tremendous group that Ned's is, and you got to check them out, guys. And a tremendous customer service, tremendous products, and they support the veteran community as well.
Absolutely. And if you've never used them before, you really don't have to wait for a sale. Thanks to us, they've hooked us up with a promo code. So if you want to check out Ned and try their CBD for yourself, we have a special offer for the Battle Line audience. Go to helloned.com/battleline or enter Battleline at checkout for 15% off your first one-time order or 20% off your first subscription order plus free shipping. That's HELLONED.com/battleline to get 15% off your first one-time order or 20% off your first subscription order plus free shipping. Thank you, Ned. Also, of course, every show that we do is sponsored by the best ammunition company on the planet, and that is your friends and our friends at Fort Scott Munitions. Fort Scott is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition. It's designed to tumble upon impact in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with every pull of that trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in all 50 states. Go to the dealer locator on the website, enter your zip code, and you're going to find the nearest place that you could find Fort Scott Munitions. And they have great merchandise. I have the Tacti-Squat shirt. Get the Tacti-Squat shirt at fortscottmunitions.com. Promo code BATTLELINE, and you'll get 15% off your order. Link is in the description. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline Podcast. With that, let's hit it.
From Omaha, Nebraska to New York City, from planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space, a podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris Tonto Peranto.
Twitch is on. Motherfucker, I'm going to shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
You know, Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the Battle Line Podcast.
The switch is on. Battleline Podcast, and actually, as we were saying in the intro, hope you all enjoyed your Father's Day, and we're recording this, though, on Friday, which is the first federal Juneteenth, so a lot of different holidays going on, but the first thing I was going to get into, man, there's several pieces of news in the community, some positive, some negative, as a lot of you saw, I posted, and it's because I saw this on Twitter from various reputable sources, that a highly decorated Army Ranger by the name of Scott Green, I mean, if you just look at the amount of accolades that he had, the guy accomplished a hell of a lot, is another guy that we've unfortunately lost to yet another veteran suicide. And I tried to write what I could that was heartfelt on the post, but the truth is, it's like, I want to raise awareness for this issue as much as we can and bring on guys like Carl Monger. But truthfully, I don't know what we can do to solve this. I don't think there's a quick fix for it, but for these guys to know that they are loved by their fellow Americans and that there is never a reason to leave us prematurely.
Yeah, being a Ranger myself and having suffered my own ups and downs, again, especially until and shameless plug or not, until I found Ned. Where really didn't get my mind right. I was up and down taking prescription medication. Always use natural remedies, in my opinion, not prescription drugs, unless you have no other choice, and you're rolling the dice with those things every day. But there's a time where the chapters. I think guys, when I say guys, again, gender neutral term here on Battleline Podcast, guys. When guys have issues up and downs, if they get out of the service or they stay in the service or they're trying to relive, old days or trying to forget the old days, instead of just accepting what happened and having that as an adventure in your life and then closing that chapter, if you're not able to see it as an adventure, you're going to have problems. And then it spills into bad relationships, which what mine did. Mine really spilled after I got out of the service. And was going through the adventure of making this movie 13 Hours and the books and all the thing that came with it, you start to surround yourself with bad people as well. And there comes a time where you really just have to look in the mirror. Guys, and so if you're having issues, look in the mirror and just ask yourself, like I did. I looked in the mirror. The hardest thing to do is look at myself, and you're going to want to look away, which is weird. You look in the mirror and you're actually not even looking at yourself. You're looking away, but looking deep in your eyes and just saying, hey, is this how I want to live my life? And if the answer is no, then you have to find a way to fix it. And Army Rangers, SEALs, Marine Recon, infantry guys out there, grunts, y'all never quit on anything. So why would you quit on yourself? Which is probably the most important thing that you can have in your life is yourself, aside from your family. But if you quit on yourself, you're quitting on your family. You don't quit anything. Why quit on your life? And
I just want to add. I mean, there's great resources out there. I tried to throw that out there when I posted about it, because whether it's 14th Hour Foundation or Gallant Few. There's a ton of different resources of guys that you could reach out to. In a way, I would say reach out to one of us. But what's crazy is, like, the problem is so rampant that I know that there's a huge burden on a guy like Carl Monger to give out his cell phone number, because when you hear that 22 a day number, whether it is 22 a day or it's less than that, we don't really know, currently, but it's a lot. And I'm sure Carl is answering calls every week from guys who are saying, I don't know if I want to be here. And it's a huge burden to put on himself. But I've also heard people, I'm trying to think of who even said it on the show. It may have been Mike Schlitz or someone who said, I would much rather get a call from you at 3 a.m. and have to talk to you for 3 hours than lose you for good.
Well, and that's you do have to pay that some mind, because I'll be honest, because I'm in that same boat where somebody will need some help. And you want to help them, but the person doesn't realize that one person, if you add it up, that turns into 10 over a long period of time, and that takes time away from my family. So it's tough. You have to juggle that if you're that person that needs to talk. But also, if you're reaching out to somebody and it's a friend or buddy and they don't get right back to you, don't feel bad. Don't get upset about it. They're not ignoring you. It's just they're trying to live their lives as well, which I know a lot of people understand. But if you're going through those hard times, guys, and I tell you again, you can reach out, get those resources to help. But when it comes right down to it, you have to fix yourself. There's nobody that could have helped me. I had a lot of resources, even guys like Ian. When I was going through hard times, he never saw it, but still talking to him at times, just seeing him and having that conversations with him was fantastic.
I mean, I'll be honest. I feel like it's the opposite. I'm going to be honest. I never heard from you during those hard times, because I had no idea you're going through them. But when I was going through hard times, I really did, and I have a video up of it on YouTube, and it's true. I thought about your story at the airport and someone making that huge difference. I swear, man, that was. I'm not going to say that stopped me from doing something stupid, but it was one thing that I reflected on, and I was like, other people have been through this, where you were at the airport. I always remember the story, and you felt like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be here. And just a random lady, stranger,
she was the sweetest lady in the world. Just showed up out of, and those things happen.
It's like an angel from God, literally. Yeah,
it is, and those things happen. So that's what I'm saying. Don't give up. Even if you can't get a hold of your buddies that you serve with, and guys, that isn't always the best thing either. Your buddies are there, but sometimes that stirs up those memories that you're trying to get away from. So you have to find it within yourself. What do I need? And I had a buddy, I'm not going to give his name, tremendous, one of my best friends. I have pictures of him on Instagram. He really shut us all out for 10 years. That's what he needed to do. None of us were angry at him at all, because that's what he needed to do to get his head right, because of all the stuff he'd been through. 10 years later, he calls, and the same group of friends were like, hey, what's going on? It's like we talked yesterday. So if you're on the other end and somebody shuts you out on your team and doesn't want to talk to you, don't take that as a negative. Sometimes that's what needs to happen. Even I do that from time to time, where I'll just turn everything off, and I don't want to talk to anybody except for my family for 4 or 5 months. And that's just how I want to get over my my issues that I'm having at times. So we all have them, guys, but we have to find the way that helps you the best. If you need to reach out, there's assets out there to reach out, like Ian was saying, you know, with Gallant Few, or Michael Schlitz is out there, or just your buddies on your team. But if you have a family and you have your wife and your kids and they're around you, and you have a good relationship with them, which is, it's important, that's who you need to lean on in the moment. If you don't, guys, then it's okay. Just find your buddy, find your mom and your dad, sister or brother, and then just look at yourself and say, I can get through this. I can do this, because I've been through everything before. I've kicked ass. Everything I've done, I can continue to kick ass, and I'm going to fight my way through this and just get up every day. I think that's what we always say. Even if you don't feel like getting out of bed, just get up and do something so it feels like you're still moving forward and taking those baby steps. But Colonel Green, I mean, this guy was a colonel. It wasn't like he was some private either. He was in charge of the Command General Staff College there in Leavenworth. He was in charge of, that's a huge college there in Leavenworth. So it wasn't like somebody that hadn't had a tremendous career. Company commander from 75th Ranger Regiment. He was a commander with one of the airborne brigades. I don't know which one. But combat veteran. Again, it can happen to anybody, so you have to, but it comes down to taking that look in the mirror and just saying, I got to fix myself. And that's how I fixed myself. And guys, you can find a way, but you have to continue to move forward. Even if it's just little by little, it will get better. You don't know when it's going to get better. Don't try to plan it when it's going to get better. Just say it's going to get better, because the tunnel will come, that light, and you'll get out of it. You just got to keep moving forward. If you don't, then you won't ever reach the light at the end of the tunnel. But keep fighting, never quit, and you'll get out of it.
Yeah, and rest in peace to Scott Green. And I wanted to bring up some positive news. I wanted to balance that out because I thought this was really cool. So an Air Force PJ, who a lot of you guys know BK because he has such a great podcast, World News with BK. He is very politically incorrect. I've always liked him. Just a super, great guy. I invited him to come on Battle Line probably a few months ago, and he said, look, I am going through a kidney transplant right now. I haven't told anybody, but I'm not talking about this right now, but he's like, I just don't have time because of this. And obviously understood. So more recently, I saw that he posted a picture in the hospital flexing, and he is all good. He had a successful kidney transplant thanks to another Air Force PJ and combat controller by the name of Scott. And we'll definitely get him on soon, but I thought that was really cool. And he was saying, I can't repay this guy enough, this other Air Force PJ. And I love that I have this community of guys who was literally able to save my life.
Gosh, and just having the right blood match, too. And that's just the weirdest thing in the world. Well, when it's meant to be, it's meant to be. So continue to fight on, Air Force. I say that with a smile on my face, BK, of course, because you're Air Force. but continue to fight on, get better, and use your story to inspire. Be politically incorrect, but in this case here, I think you have an inspirational story, and you can help people with your story of coming out of this with was it new kidney or kidneys? Which one, right?
I assume so, yeah.
It's
his original post was pretty funny, though, where he was like, I've had a hard time being the usual jacked and tan BK through all this, getting exercise. And, but now he's, he said, because he is a super active guy. He is a guy who loves working out and swimming, lives in San Diego, and, is doing all that stuff and going to the beach. And, it was tough for him from what I read, but now he's back to that active lifestyle.
That's good. It always is tough when you're bedridden forever and you want to be active. But I said, he's got another tremendous life experience that he can use to help others when they're having their issues. That's the beauty of life experiences, good or bad, especially if you're air quotes, a public figure out there. It doesn't always have to be negative. You can use those experiences that you're going through right now to help somebody else that's going through some illness to get through it or going through a hard time. And like you said, that Ian, we're going full circle. Like Ian said, he remembered a story that I had when I was having my issues where I got through them, and that's how it helped him, at least a small part, helped him get through some of the demons that he was battling. Well,
100%. There's two things I remember from that time that helped me out. I swear to you. That story, I've said it on the show, I know. That story and walking through New York City, and I heard some guy on a saxophone in front of Macy's playing You Are Not Alone by Michael Jackson.
That's
and it may sound corny, but the song hit me at that time. It did make me tear up, and it made me realize I need to reach out to loved ones and be open about how I'm feeling. And but everybody, I think, goes through these things for sure. Anyway, I don't want to be negative about all this, because we do try to stay positive here on this show, and Alex is going to be really fun to bring on. But before we get to Alex, there's a great new sponsor on board with us, and I feel like for our show, when I've been working with them, a lot of our show is into camping and survivalism and all that stuff, and I'm like, this is totally on board with what we do. So for the ones who live life on their own terms, the ones who venture to wide open spaces off the grid, you know that mobile and outdoor living still require energy and power to get you to where you want to be and stay connected. With systems designed for backpackers all the way to RVers, Jackery provides the energy and power you need. As a pioneer in the portable power industry, Jackery launched the world's first lithium portable power station in 2015 and continues to provide innovative tech solutions for outdoor green power. With the Jackery Explorer solar-ready portable power station, the Jackery Easy Carry Solar Saga solar panels, or the Jackery rechargeable power stations that can function as a solar generator system for backup and off-grid power, Jackery can take your outdoor adventures to the next level. So whether you're camping, whether you are someone RVing, like, this is an awesome product. Wow. Check out all of this stuff. So check them out now. Go to Jackery.com, Jackery.com, Jackery.com to find out more.
Hey guys, the Jackery, the solar generators, these things are outstanding. You need to check them out. If you're getting outside quite a bit, even if you just do a day of fishing, but you bring your little pop-up out there, or if you bring your little, even just bring your little camper out there, guys, you always need power out there. As much as we like to rough it, we like to have our little things that make life easy on us. And getting out camping and getting out in the outdoors is fun, but having some of those little modern touches are tremendous. It makes it even more fun, especially if you have children like I do. So, and having those ability to have that electronics out there, have those things working with the solar panels nonetheless, so you don't have to carry gasoline everywhere, which it's not always the best thing in the world. So, guys, check Jackery out. Check their website out. It's a tremendous website. You're going to be able to find answers to a lot of your questions. And if you're an outdoorsman like myself, and I know Ian likes to get outdoors, I like to fish. It's something that you do need in the back of your side-by-side, or the back of your Kawasaki Mule when you're going out there and doing your fishing or hunting or just getting outdoors. Tremendous company. I'm ecstatic that they're on with us, because this is right up our alley. Fantastic stuff.
So for the first time on Battle Line Podcast, but a guy I've talked to many, many times before, Alex Hollings, journalist, Marine Corps veteran, fitness enthusiast, athlete, and of course the author of The Perception Wars, How Influence Shapes Conflict. I have a bunch of things I could talk about, but before we get into any of that, while we brought you on, you were talking about your experience like with Tonto's book and movie, so we might as well get right into it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like there isn't anybody in that covers national security or defense who doesn't know who Tonto is. Right?
This is true.
So that's not always a good thing, though, either. I mean, it's not like, so people think that's positive. Like, not about half hate my guts, but that's okay. It's all right. And most of them are still working.
People hating you means you stand up for something, right?
Sure, sure.
Yeah. So when Tonto's book came out, I was working at SOFREP at the time, and there was a bunch of people talking about it, saying, we should definitely read and review this book. And at the time, I didn't know much about the Rangers. I was friends with Luke Ryan, who was an Army Ranger. I know a bunch of Rangers, obviously Jack Murphy.
Yeah.
But
so
I knew very little about it.
Just to jump in here, this is the Ranger way, then.
Yeah, yes, this is the Ranger way. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
And so when I jumped into the book, I decided that I was going to read the entire book cover to cover in like 3 days.
What, Marines? You can't read what in 3 days? Holy shit!
I was like, I know I have a deadline for Wednesday. I'm gonna spend the next 3 days sitting in my office just reading this book. And it was a blast. It didn't feel like work at all. It felt like I was just hanging out reading a book. And it was my introduction to the idea of being a Ranger, let alone going through the process twice, you know?
Sure, yeah.
If you were to ask me, you know, I'm very proud of my time in the Marine Corps, but if you were to ask me if I wanted to go do boot camp again, I would say no.
Dude, that was, you know, but you'd be shocked because I was ready this time around. You know, you have to get, and Marines the same way. The fuck games are what gets guys to quit, or it's the mind games. It's you.
Could not agree more.
It's you. You're making it way worse in your head than what it really is going to be. It's those things, and that's what DIs or drill instructors or when rip cadre were tremendous at it. Ranger instructors not so much. Our eyes at school, because the school sucks on its own. You really don't need to prep make it any. But at RIP, it was the same thing because it's an indoc. It's a lot worse and you get it in your head. Now it sucks. It's terrible, but that's part of the thing is just fucking with your head. And yeah, man. So going in the second time, I was really prepared mentally because like, okay, I know what's coming. So I got my body right too. That was another thing too. I was staying in shape. I was getting my 2 mile time was I was running like 11 minute 2 miles sub. So, you know, but I was ready. You know, but I was ready. So I was training for it. And to be honest with you, brother Alex, when I got there though too, even that little time frame for about 4 years in between that break, the Army had changed. The Army had changed. The standards had already, they were already getting lowered. So, you know, going back in where your max 2 mile time had to be 11:54 when I first went in, which is pretty, to max a PT test. That's fast. Yeah, that's fast. Yeah. Going to 13 minutes, and then the push-ups being lowered and the sibs being lowered, and then just the hazing, which was slowly going away because of stress cars that started to come out. It was even easier. I'm like, this is a joke. And then going into, you know, the first time I went into basic training there at the infantry, I know this is Alex's, I'm not the interviewer guy. Alex, that's hard. But going
he started it this way.
Yeah, no, but going into...
and I'm interested. I want to hear this, yeah.
Well, you know, going into 258, 2nd Battalion's 58 Infantry there at Fort Benning, and the first day there, the drill sergeant smacking the shit out of a kid from New York who smarted off to him, and that was day one. I mean, that was day one, and watching it going, shit, I didn't think this stuff kind of happened anymore, where drill sergeants would knock guys around, which was totally necessary. It was, this is what it needs to be. You got to get guys recalibrated. Going to 4 years later where they're not even allowed to put their hands on you. You know, you can get in their faces, and you know, you saw it in the Marine Corps the same way, where they went from not being able to put their hands on them to, yeah, you can still get in their faces, but there is a difference, especially if your mind's right, to, okay, he's yelling at me, big freaking deal, I'll just turn him out, to, holy shit, if I do something wrong, somebody's going to grab me and yank me and put me where I need to be or throw me against the wall. That is a complete difference, and it gets your mind, to me, it gets your mind right. Either you need to be here, or is this not really what you're looking for? And it helped me get back into Rangers. But RIP itself, like you said, people don't realize Ranger School is not going to Ranger Battalion. Ranger School is your qualification. Yes, you need it to stay at Ranger Battalion to become a leader. You cannot become an E5. You cannot become a team leader without your tab. But the first E1, E2, or by the time you get to Ranger Battalion, you're an E2. But E2 to E4, that RIP time, that's when you're a private. And RIP is that NDOC to get you in, which is now called RASP. It's changed. So it's that NDOC to get into the 75th Ranger Regiment. And I equate it to Ranger School being like getting punched in the arm, really soft, but for like 3 months. So eventually it just becomes really sore, where Ranger NDOC is basically Mike Tyson standing back and smacking the shit out of you in the face one time really, really fucking hard. and you either get back up or you don't. So I'm glad you read that, because a lot of guys don't understand that. And Jack and Luke will tell you the same thing. We're not virtue protectors. We're not Ranger 75th Ranger protectors. But when we hear a guy say, "Yeah, I was an Army Ranger," well, what battalion did you serve with? Well, I was with the 101st. And we're like, okay, good job on your Ranger School, but come on now. I hate that. And you see that all the time in the gun community. the training.
It's not that far off from I was basically infantry.
That's I was basically.
Infantry.
I was basically infantry. I was attached to them, and the Marines. You guys got that same thing with the.
Oh yeah, because I wasn't an infantry guy, but I'm probably one of the few among my friends who will volunteer that information. You know, you go to the gun range, and somehow we're all war heroes.
Everybody's a sniper. Everybody
Absolutely.
was infantry. I just admit it. I told Rian, I'm the one guy that you will ever talk to that was not a sniper. I was never a sniper ever in the community. Everybody was a sniper. It's like, holy shit. Did we not have any door kickers going?
You know, and especially, you know, what I do for a living, I effectively write book reports for a living now. I do a great deal of research, you know, and when people ask me, "Oh, you were in the Marine Corps," I was like, "Yeah, I've always been a nerd." You know, I was bigger and stronger and fitter. You know, I might have been able to hold my own in a fight, but I was still a geek. You know,
well, you're a nerd that could kick ass. You're sorry. That's cool. That's cooler than shit. I was a smart guy that could beat your ass.
That's the goal to be. Yeah, that's the plan. That's the plan.
Well, I don't. Okay, now that we've talked, even though you're the guest on the show, we've barely talked about my background. Let's go into because if you can, and I know Ian knows a lot of it. You know, you being at SOFREP, tremendous, and thank you for the book review because SOFREP, especially at that time, your guys' following was massive. I mean, it was incredible.
It really was.
And, you did help. I appreciate that.
Genuine, I appreciate that. I do.
No, but tell people about your background, and then if you can, starting with your military, if you don't mind getting into, because we always have a lot of young listeners that are looking to join the service. I say that every time I have a service member on. So give them some. And you don't have to church it up. If hey man, we have guys that hey don't do it, it's not worth it right now. Or guys like yeah, fucking rock on. Go. You'll be honest with them and tell them what do you think. But I'd like to hear your service time too, bro, because I don't know much about it aside from your time at SOFREP.
Well, you got it. I got in a little late. I was 21 when I enlisted. I was one of those guys who always talked about joining the military, but never really had that kick in my ass that made me get off the couch and stop being comfortable. But when I was like 19 or 20, I met a girl, I dropped out of college, went and got a job, as a part slinger and a tech for a racing team for Skip Barber Racing. And,
wow.
Which I loved the job. You know, my older brother, has had a pretty successful career in racing. So he got me in the door, you know, and, it was a great job, but there wasn't really anywhere to go unless my aspirations were to be, you know, a traveling pit mechanic, which is awesome at 20, but I knew probably wouldn't be great for me at 40, you know, or I have buddies who still do the job. It gets tough, you know, by the time you're 50, living your life on the road, in a race pit is not that different than, you know, digging holes to sleep in. It's a tough job, without a lot of pension coming at the end of it, you know? So I was thinking about what I might be able to do with my life, and I spoke to a Marine Corps recruiter a few times. And then my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, got sick, and she worked at an amusement park. I was a mechanic. We didn't have health insurance. We already lived together. I was like, hey, I have an idea. I'll just go enlist. We'll get married real quick, and that'll pay for your hospital stay, and then we'll figure the rest out later. It was not the most well thought out plan. I went to the recruiting office on Wednesday. I said, hey, when does the health insurance start? And he said, when you ship. I said, when can I ship? He said, well, what job do you want? I said, I don't care. He said, Sunday. So I left in a hurry. I didn't know what my MOS would be until I got all the way through combat training. But the Marine Corps, even though I got there really abruptly and maybe without some good forethought, it ended up being, honestly, probably the best thing I could have done. Maybe not the best thing for everyone, but certainly for me, you know. But it wasn't without its challenges. I ended up getting stuck in an admin MOS, which I hated initially. So
you were through combat. So you were Joker. Basically, that's who you were from Full Metal Jacket. You were fucking Joker, dude. That's
and just waiting to find out what my job would be. But I had this idea that I was going to be on an air crew for a helicopter. I was like, they're going to put me in a helicopter. I'm going to be air crew. It's going to be awesome.
And you have always been an aviation nerd,
yes.
From what I know.
Yes, yeah. I have always been an aviation nerd, but I have some vision problems, so nobody would ever let me fly anything. And at the time, honestly, college, I went to college on a writing scholarship briefly, but didn't have any real interest in finishing it, you know?
Yeah.
So when I got to the Marine Corps, I was stationed in 29 Palms, lovely 29 Palms.
Yeah, desert. Oh, man, it's beautiful out there if you're not on 29 Palms. But if you're in Palm Springs, you're good to go. But just not 29 Palms.
Over time, it did grow on. I did hate it initially. But, I got to play. I didn't like my job, right? So I was always the guy with my hand in the air to go. I got to try out for first the battalion football team and then the Marine Corps West Coast football team.
Wow.
I got to fight for the Marine Corps' first mixed martial arts team while I was out there. I got to volunteer for a bunch of really incredible things, but it wasn't without its challenges. We had a few suicides within my shop while we were there. One which was very close to me, that really kind of affected my view and my perspective on service in a pretty dramatic way. And then I was offered orders to Germany based on extending, and I snatched them right up. And after they moved all my household goods, they canceled my orders to Germany and redirected me to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, which is like the opposite of going. I'm from Vermont. It was like they sent me back. I was like, please don't send me home. But it was good for my wife. And when I got there, I was in charge of training reservists, and I was a funeral honors NCO for 4 years.
Holy crap. Wow.
Whenever I talk about my time as a funeral honors NCO, I mean, I did, a light week would maybe be 3 funerals per week. A really heavy one might be more.
Man, that's got to be. We had Gunny Bustler on, and he talked about he was in he's a Marine that was in the, they don't call it funeral direct, but mortuary affairs. Man, to me, I went through some stuff, and did some things here or there, but I still think just because of the morbidity, is that even a word? But I'm going to use it anyway. It's my word anyway. It would be tough to get to work because really, what are the positive? How do you make that positive when, you may not be getting shot at, but you're seeing death, and you have to make it look good for the family, which is good. You want to honor them, but God dang, after a week of doing that, it's like, how can I keep making this positive for these people that we're trying to honor them when all I'm seeing really dead bodies? And does it just turn into not even a person where you have to internalize it and compartmentalize it, where it's just, I'm not even seeing people anymore. I've got to compartmentalize it and seeing dead bodies. Not to be disrespectful, but just to save your own head, man.
No, you hit the nail on the head. I'll be the first to tell you that a lot of the funerals that you work are tough. Some of them are incredibly tough, but more of them than you might think are kind of positive in a big way. I can think of a few stood out to me in particular. Maybe the hardest funeral I ever served on was a corporal who had just come back from deployment and ended up killing himself. Okay. And so his unit came up from Camp Lejeune, and I had presented flags to spouses and to parents. I presented flags to kids a few times. It's never easy, but I presented the flag to his NCO to present to his mother. Wow. And his NCO, I was a young corporal at the time, and his NCO was a sergeant who had just come back from his 3rd deployment. And when he approached me, the way every movement that you do in a Marine Corps funeral honor ceremony in particular is very robotic. Sure. And he came up with just perfect military bearing, perfect drill movements, but just with tears streaming down his face. And that was the thing that made me break my bearing. I was very good at maintaining my bearing, but to just to see the reality of what this ceremony represented on his face was significant. But conversely, there was one funeral for, he was a Marine veteran who'd become a police officer in the Massachusetts State Police, and the Mass State Police came out in force for the funeral. They put on a hell of a show on his behalf. But that funeral was very much a celebration, whereas funerals, particularly funerals for suicides, are very, very difficult to get through. Funerals for a guy like that, a guy who was a hellacious warfighter, got out of the military, decided to continue to serve his country, in a law enforcement capacity, ended up being killed in the line of duty. And every day of that man's life, he was working toward what he felt would make this world a better place, for the people around him. He was fighting for his buddies in the Marine Corps. He was fighting for his buddies in the police department or in the state police. And then, the state police who were there, who were off duty, were passing around a bottle of Jameson. The cops who were on duty, were in their best dress uniforms. And the whole event felt almost jovial. Everybody was there to remember how great this guy was, and everywhere in between. There are some that are almost funny, to be totally honest.
I agree. I can see that. Definitely.
There are religions that have a different relationship with God than the ones that maybe we're accustomed to. I definitely remember during one funeral ceremony, thunder striking and the Reverend stopping and pointing at the sky and saying, "You wait until I'm finished."
Dude, that's awesome. I wish I wish we could have that. That would be a perfect. If you can find that anywhere, and when we start doing our videos, we gotta have
right.
that. We start doing our intro, man. Boom. You will stop till I'm finished. Wait till roll into it. Wait till I'm finished. That's incredible, man.
But the whole process. I deployed, and I'm fortunate to say that I had to point a rifle at someone twice. I never had to pull a trigger. Which for a service member, while I was on active duty, I'll readily admit that was a chip on my shoulder. I regretted not getting to fight.
I think a lot of guys do that, Alex. They come back, and if they haven't, but I'm telling you right now, if you're a Marine or Ranger or SEAL, and 9 times out of 10 now, most of you guys probably have pulled the trigger. But if you haven't, you would have been able to. There's nothing because the only difference is that I did pull the trigger. But I was the same person before that saying, man, I wonder if I could do this. But I'm telling you, when shit hits the fan, yeah, you'll be able to do it. And you don't need to go through it to prove it to yourself. You were trained that way. You will go into that motion. So if that's any consolation to you, dude, don't ever, and all those other people out there listening, don't let it ever beat yourself up, because the only difference between a guy pulling the trigger or not is that he was put in a situation that he had to. But he's that same person that you are. He just was put in that different situation. So don't think that you wouldn't be able to as well. I want to put that, because I see a lot of guys beating themselves up about that or feeling guilty about it.
I think that's huge. For a guy like you to tell people that, I think is huge. My job, I run a news outlet called Sandbox News now, where my job is really to engage with service members. There are our target audience are guys and girls on active duty. And I always talk about your service being enough, But to be totally frank, it's easy for me to say that as a guy who was a pogue, I got to play football and then I got the cage fight.
Dude, getting hit in the face is still pretty impressive, man. I don't want to get hit in the face.
I loved every minute of it, but it's easy for me to say, yeah, we're all heroes. It's easy for me to get to be the champion of that cause, but to have a guy like you, who's been in really dire circumstances, who's really shown what you're made of, for you to tell these young kids, hey, your service is enough. You don't have to be the door kicker for your service to be enough and for you to be worth it. I think that's super important. That's just awesome.
I appreciate that. And this is God honest truth, man. There's no difference. It's just I was in a situation where I had to do it. But I'm that same person as you are. You just haven't been in that situation. But if you were, you'd do the same thing. Guarantee it.
I like to think so. But I really appreciate you saying it. Coming from you, that means a lot.
But that shows you humility too. And that's part of it. If you're humble and you say, I like to think so, well, there's no doubt in my mind that you would. There's no doubt the humility comes with that extra step that if you have to cross over it, you can. And you were trained to do it. And I think a lot of guys miss that. I was trained to do it, but I never did it. Believe me, you do it. You were trained to do it. You went through it. You would do it. You would switch on. The switch is on. It would come on out of nowhere. I'd lock up. I guarantee you, Marine, you wouldn't lock up. Ranger, I guarantee you wouldn't lock up. I have an old buddy that we call him Lasagna. He was one of my GRS mentors. Well, he was a peacetime ranger, and he would always be like, "Man, I never did it." The Ranger Battalion, and he did. He was awesome. He never got in any altercations at GRS because he was so good. He could sneak around and blend. But that was his one thing. He's like, "Man, I just want to get in a gunfight one time." And this is a 75th guy that was a peace. He missed his time at Somalia, and then he missed his time because he started doing agency stuff before the GWAT, But I was like, dude, you are my mentor. Are you kidding me? You're doubting yourself after you sneak around the city wearing Haji clothes, looking like a white dude, but still being. I said, come on, man. So even guys that are salty as that would have their doubts as well. And you know, I just tell them, dude, come on, you know you would. And that's why I have no doubt in my mind that guys like yourself or anybody else out there that have been through situations would pull the trigger, because you have these salty dudes, veterans doing this stuff for 20 years, 30 years that never pulled the trigger and still kind of have doubts on themselves, even though they're putting themselves in situations where, God damn, people would be shitting their pants, because it's not all about pulling triggers. Sometimes it's just about sneaking, peeking, and doing that stuff. So that's where I came my realization. It doesn't matter if you pull the trigger 8 million times or not. If you've done what you've done, you would, dude. I guarantee you would. And that comes from my buddy Lasagna, who was my mentor and as a bat boy himself from 3rd Ranger Battalion. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. That's
not only is this a clip I'm just going to cut out and play for my wife, but I really want to reiterate though, for those young guys out there, you know, I had a tough transition out. I got hurt, not in combat, you know, but you know, I tore up my knees playing football. I had some other injuries just from in training. So I had, you know, 6 surgeries in quick succession, and the Marine Corps was just kind of through with me. They took great care of me. You know, they medically separated me and it went well. But I had a tough transition because I derived so much of my identity from being a Marine, you know, and so when I made that switch, and I had that chip on my shoulder that, you know, when I meet people, especially in a place like Massachusetts, which is where I went to college, they're like, oh, you were a Marine? The 2 responses are either they'll just call you a baby killer, or they'll ask if you've ever killed anybody, right?
And neither is comfortable.
Yeah, man. Those are both honestly inappropriate ways to engage with a veteran. But, you know, when someone asks you that, your immediate response is, I wish you wouldn't ask if I killed somebody.
Yeah.
But especially if you're a guy who never did pull any triggers, you immediately feel a little bit less than those guys who have, because you feel as though this person's not going to respect me as a veteran unless I tell them that I'm a badass, you know?
Well, but you are.
It's so important for these young guys, you know, to not. That's exactly what I mean. Because for me, you know, it kind of piled into that. You know, I went the depression route for a little while on my way out. Sure. Other guys go the drugs and alcohol route. Other guys go the getting into fights to prove how hard they are route. Which honestly may be why I got into cage fighting in the first place. But we all kind of go through that a little bit, and with that. Being self-destructive is romantic. You know, we romanticize this idea of being like, I'm just going to eat this shit, and I'm going to be quiet with my back to the wall and just get saltier and saltier.
No, I call it the Valhalla mindset, man.
Yes.
All going to Valhalla because it's cool to finally, you know, it's cool to burn out instead of fade away, sort of. Like, no, not if you're going to kill yourself or make yourself go down that road where you're eventually going to die by your own hands.
Exactly. I mean, it's badass to be badass, right? But when you're just kind of circling the drain, because of what you think about your service or what you are capable of. I love that a guy like you is out there telling these same guys, hey man, you don't need to circle that drain. You know?
Well, if I could transition to something kind of positive from this, one thing I know about Alex is like, you are a guy who is, and we've used the word before, like openly a nerd for so many things. And I think that passion is what makes you strive and what makes you passionate about what you do for a living. Like whether it's your love of firearms or comic books or aviation, like I just know that you have a passion for so many different things, and that you get to write about this stuff as your outlet. Like, is what makes you feel alive.
I'm living a winning lottery ticket. I really am. And but that's what the Marine Corps was a big part of that. When I first graduated, you know, after I was medically retired from the Corps, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, so I just went to college for the GI Bill, you know. And
you got it. Use it. Hey man, I used mine. You got it.
Absolutely,
use it. Definitely.
But I found out in college, you know, as a 30-year-old guy sitting in the back of class, just lifting weights and still hoping I get to fight somebody. I found out that I loved this stuff. You know, I loved reading. I loved analytical writing. I found out that I really had a passion for it. I always enjoyed writing, but I didn't think that it was something you did. It was, you know, it was something. I was a hobby.
Yeah.
So when I graduated, I took a job as an HR guy for a defense contractor, thinking that's
Holy shit.
that's what a guy like me is going to do now. You know, my legs are shot, but I can go work for a defense contractor. I'm still participating in the fight. And man, I'm a bad HR guy. I am not the right guy to have people come into my office crying. I am not the right guy to console you on your rough days.
Yeah. Politically correct. Suck it up. Get back out there.
You know? Tell me again what it is. You're upset because Steve was mean to you? I don't care.
You said just duck walk out of my office right now. Duck walk and get back to your desk. I don't want to hear your shit.
During that window of time, my mother-in-law passed away kind of abruptly from lung cancer. And for my wife and I, it was a real wake-up call. We realized, oh, hey, you could hate your job right up until the day you abruptly pass away. I don't want to do that. And I'm really lucky. We didn't have kids at the time. And I said to my wife, I really want to take a crack at pursuing writing for a living. We're not going to make much money. And she said, all right, let's just go be poor. You know, so we moved to Georgia, where my guns were legal, and where the cost of living was lower.
Cost of living, I was going to say, it's a little different from Massachusetts into Georgia.
Exactly, you know.
As long as you're out of Atlanta, you weren't in Atlanta. Get out of Atlanta proper.
Exactly, we moved to the woods. You know, I did some work consulting for some racing teams for a little while. Now that I had a degree, I was not in the pits anymore. Now I was doing marketing consulting and stuff, and just tried to find people who'd pay me to write. And you know, for 2 years, it didn't really work. It worked all right, you know. And then right about when I was finishing grad school, I got hired by SoftRep. I worked there for a while, and I ran a couple of their other websites for a while. And then about a year and a half ago, I got a guy named Sam Meek reached out to me. He was a Marine sergeant who deployed to Iraq a few times. He and a guy named General Ray Smith, who was a legendary Marine in Vietnam, established this company called Sandbox, which was... Are you familiar with Moto letters from back in the day? Sandbox just kind of replaced Moto letters. For those of you who aren't familiar, just like a way to get mail to guys in training, easier and quicker than throwing it in the mail. And Sandbox itself as a company ended up doing very well. So Sam reached out to me to ask if I wanted to try to launch a website that Sandbox would fund, with the idea being getting news and information to service members without politics, without kind of sensationalism and clickbait, just kind of giving people, an honest shake at what's going on, and a place where maybe your mom and dad could come to find out what's going on around the military without the lens of, you know, who's in the White House right now or things like that. I honestly wasn't sure it would work. You know, sensationalism and anger tends to sell really well.
We say that on this show all the time. All the time. That's what sells. So it's no longer. It's part of sex, sensationalism, and anger.
It sells.
Very true.
That's it. Yep.
That's a good way of putting it.
And you know, I faked confidence the whole time going through the interview process. I was like, I can absolutely do it.
I can do it.
Just like I did on a promotion board. If you don't know the right answer, just say the wrong one as confidently as you can. You're going to get through here. But I still don't know if I'm good at this or we're lucky. But you know, we ended up doing 20 million views in our first year.
That's awesome.
We're trending 40% higher than that this year. We're doing great. And most importantly to me, we're not kind of participating in, I think a lot of people make their money by shitting on the military at this point.
Right now. Yeah.
And that's not to say that we shouldn't shine a critical light on things that the military does wrong, on things that America does wrong. Obviously, the country has flaws. Everyone's got flaws. Obviously, our military's got flaws. But I think that there's plenty of that. I think there's a lot of folks out there focused on the negative, even to a fault. And I'm glad to get to be a part of, you know, if you want to Google, you know, Marines or Rangers or something, you're going to find my website. You're going to learn something good about them without necessarily just being inundated with the worst days that the service has had or the worst experiences that service members have had.
Well, that's low-hanging fruit for those that don't like the military, or I think a lot of people also attribute the military to being more conservative. Most members probably are.
I think it's probably pretty fair. Yeah.
But it's always low-hanging. That's easy. It's easy for politicians to find that low-hanging fruit of, okay, what has the military done wrong this time? And we can get our base spun up because a lot of these guys are rednecks from Georgia because that's what the world thinks. And dude, and that's why it's great to have something out there that isn't like that. That just that does the truth. Really, literally does the truth. Bad or good, this is the truth here. And I even started to see that, and I want to get your opinion. I started to see the sensationalism, which at the time I was in, I didn't think that was possible. But in the Times, the Marine Times, the Army Times, I started to see that turning into the New York Times type news, and not getting good information, or not getting accurate information, or starting to slant one way, or doing the clickbait like you said. But what is your opinion on them today? Because I back in the day when I first did, I loved reading Army Times because I thought that was the end all be all. Now I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know if I think it's slanted. It's getting more slanted depending on who's in office.
I want to preface up front that I'm friends with a bunch of folks over there, so I don't mean them any disrespect. I think that the Military Times, kind of like all of us, is trying to figure out how media is changing and how to make that work. You know, when I went to grad school, 5 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. But the stuff that I learned, the case studies we did then, were already way outdated, Okay.
Dude, everything is, if I could just jump in here, everything is changing so fast.
Absolutely.
I noticed it with what I do, with radio, with media. Like, old school radio is a totally different business model. And also, when I first got into this, podcasts were a new thing. And I think people who are into like this old news media thing often forget, like, a popular Joe Rogan episode gets way more listeners than anything on Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, minus maybe Tucker Carlson, who gets amazing ratings, or Hannity.
To your very point, I was talking to Ward Carroll the other day. He's, one of the guys that founded military.com and We Are the Mighty. He works for the Naval Institute now. He's a pretty established dude in my line of work. And he was telling me that for the Naval Institute, they've turned their publishing model on its head. They do the podcast first, and episodes that do well on a podcast, they'll write about for their print edition. The podcast comes first and foremost. After the podcast was YouTube, and then, as much as it pains me as a writer to say, after podcast and then YouTube, then comes writing, which, I have a face for radio and a voice for print. So I wish it was the other way around, but you're 100% right, and everybody's trying to figure out how to stay viable.
And with writing, it's so much just reading the headline, and then you get into the gist of the article, and it is not what the headline says.
I call that making promises versus keeping promises.
Right, and I've been in that. I have been involved in stuff like that with CNN International, with some of Fox's write-ups on there, where they'll take something out of context. The normal shit, take something out of context of what I said, and then you go in the article, and there's the truth down there at the very bottom. But that's honestly, that's why I stopped doing. I don't do any more Fox or CNN or New York Times or Washington Post, or I do none of that anymore. And honestly, it really hasn't hurt me on
awareness. I bet you it hasn't.
It hasn't.
But you raise a great point. The biggest mainstream outlets are doing this. So then when smaller independent outlets are doing it too, you start to wonder, all right, why? My argument would be that it's because it's a supply and demand industry.
Exactly.
And there aren't enough responsible news consumers like you, Tonto. I know, Ian, you're like this too, where you'll go, I don't like the way that they are skewing this, so I'm going to let it die in silence. I'm going to ignore it. Because when you comment under something to say this is awful, you just increased its organic reach.
Yes.
When you share something to say, look how bad this is, you just exposed it to all the people in your social sphere. If you ignore the bad and signal boost the good, we'll see a shift.
That's what we said, and it's slow, but you just have to continue. Everything that's good takes time. It's anything you do in life. It's worth the effort. It's going to change, but it's going to take time. It doesn't happen overnight. And Ian and I preach that same. We have that same mindset here. Don't just turn it off. We always say, turn that shit off. Just turn it off. Go outside. Go fishing. Go take your Jackery solar machine. We said every time, dude. If it's shit and it's skewed and it tends to continue to be that way, turn it off. Just turn it all off. I
don't like being told what to think. even if I agree with you, I don't want you to tell me what to think.
Yeah, exactly. You don't tell me. I'll figure it out from. But it's just like mushrooms. If you keep feeding mushrooms shit, they're going to grow. And by you watching them, you're feeding them your shit. So these things are going to grow off the continual shit that we feed them, which is our anger, sex, sensationalism, and anger. It's that shit we feed them.
Yeah.
If we stop feeding them, it will go. It will eventually go away, or they'll change and be like, oh my gosh, this isn't working anymore. The problem is, anger and sensationalism are like crack to us in America right now. It's to the world.
Agreed.
We have to have it. Nobody can just turn it off for a day because I got to make my comment. No, you don't.
Yes.
Go fishing.
Exactly. And Lord knows, I do this for a living, and I've fallen into that trap. I have found myself angrily commenting on something on Facebook and then being like,
we all have.
What are you doing, dude? What do you do? Like
well, Alex, you've been like on the ground floor of all this for several years now, as I have, and I think people who aren't in the industry don't realize this. I think people think that there's like some sinister power at the top.
Yes, they do.
Like, we need to get these people to fight amongst each other, and there's like a conspiracy among it. I think it's much more simple than that, because I just see from my own experience, this is what people click on.
Yes.
People could say all they want, like, I'm tired of this racial division, I'm tired, but it is what they click on.
It's low-hanging
I even
fruit,
know with
it's
our
easy.
titles, I have to be a little bit more provocative if I want to get those clicks. The only difference is, and I'm sure you're the same way, I will do my best if it is a bit of a sensational sounding headline. I want it to be as factual as possible. So I'll give you an example. Like, we had the episode talking about the Eddie Gallagher war crime stuff.
Yes, I listened to it.
Thank you. The title I know is going to get clicks, but there's nothing in that title that I could say is incorrect or infactual. It is what it is. But I just know when we talk about that stuff, or when Trump came out and he said, he shared an article that the SEALs never killed bin Laden. That episode got a ton of listens. I knew it was going to get a ton of listens, and I want to balance it out as much as I can, because I don't want every episode to be gun control, liberals did this, Biden did this, Kamala Harris and the border. Yeah. But I know that's what gets clicks.
You're 100% right.
How could we balance out being positive and getting factual information out there with also being popular? Because we don't do this just to talk among ourselves. All of us in media, we do want it to be a popular source of information,
Yeah, I mean, this is our livelihoods, right? But hearing you guys say this is so inspiring, though, right? I mean, this means that, here I am with my little website over here trying to
Which is not a little website. It's not a website.
Dude, you had 20 million views. It's about this big.
It's this big. Yeah, it's
that big.
Right?
It's big.
And here you guys over here with your podcast with a very similar intent, right? You're trying to be a part of the right side of the conversation. And the more of this that happens, I think we're going to see that shift.
Yeah.
But to what you're saying, Ian, you're 100% right. I used to get, when I covered politics, I got a lot more death threats and angry commenters. I get fewer now that I mostly do tech. But you still get those people who go, oh, you're a journalist. You're one of them. You're in the Illuminati. And it happens more often than I really would have expected. What people don't realize is that even when we're talking about those big outlets, the Foxes and the CNNs that skew kind of right and left, they didn't come here to sell you that skew. They didn't come here to sell you conservative or liberal talking points. They came here to sell you to sell you attention. They want your attention.
Yeah. They're just selling you to
know.
They're selling you to advertise.
Exactly.
And they're doing it as effectively as possible.
I try my best to always be very open about this. Our revenue model on Sandbox News is ad impression based, which means when you come to our website, if you don't have your ad blocker turned on and you scroll down the site and some of our ads are in your field of view, I get paid a fraction of a cent each time that happens, right? And overall, with enough views, that accumulates to a sizable amount of money. And we've got some other revenue streams based on our mailing lists and stuff like that. But it's a pretty simple process. The more people who come to my page, the more times they'll see these ads, the more money we make. And that money is what we use not just to keep the lights on, but it's how we pay our writers and create this content, right? So if I know that if I put Navy SEAL in the headline, I'm going to get 30,000 more views today, I understand the inclination to put Navy SEAL in your headline. Now, if I put Navy SEAL plus war crimes in my headline, it's going to do even better. The same way if I put F-35 and failure in my headline. I know it'll do well, even though the F-35, just like the Navy SEALs and all things military, is an incredibly nuanced and complex topic, right? But people don't want any of that. They want a tweet that they can use to shit on somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's where those really kind of egregious headlines come from. But the only way that stops is from people like us who consume our media being responsible about it, and people like us who produce it being responsible. But the real power is in the readers and the listeners and the Facebook engagers. The audience has all of the power here.
They do. You keep clicking on it. You keep going to it. You keep looking at the ads. You as being we, I should say you, but we. It's
all of us, right?
It's all we do that. Well, of course, they're gonna keep putting out divisive stuff because that's what people want. Yeah. And that's the easiest thing to speak about because you're always going to have everybody's going to have an opinion, and everybody's opinion matters, especially nowadays. I tell you guys, not everybody's. I don't. You'd be pissed off at me if you want. Not everybody's opinion matters on everything. It doesn't, guys. Yeah. I don't care what TV tells you or not. Sometimes your opinion, you just need to keep it to yourself.
The list of people I've blocked on Twitter agrees with you.
It is. There you go. But it is. If you're not willing to be objective. Man, how do I put it? Not willing to be objective, which most people that watch just CNN or Fox are not being objective. If you're not willing to be objective, then turn it off, guys. Turn it off. Or restart. Do a reload. Turn it off for a month and just cleanse your palate. Do an enema. Do a brain enema, and then turn it back on later and see if or get into a platform where you're seeing both sides, where you're getting both headlines,
or that's just objective. I mean, because I will say I read Alex's stuff on Sandbox. There really is not an agenda. Yeah, of course, and the stuff on AP, not the opinion articles on AP, the news stuff is always pretty objective.
They're getting a lot better coming back. AP is starting to get a lot better coming back to where they were back in the past. Straight down, objective down the
as long as once again, I mean, AP has an opinion section and they have a news section.
But it says opinion.
It says opinion.
Those tend to be very left.
Yeah, I have no problem with you. I have no problem with having an agenda as long as you're clear about it. As long as you tell me what your agenda is, then I'm totally down. Sometimes I'm looking for your agenda. I'm a big believer in challenging my positions, in part because I write them for a living. And if there's a big blind spot in my position, I'm going to look like an asshole. So I want to go and find those arguments that are going to deflate mine ahead of time so I can address them when I'm forming my position. And sometimes I'm going to go looking for your opinion. But I do not want to come looking for an objective assessment of what's going on and find your opinion, especially because people are not always that good at distinguishing between the two, No,
because agendas, your personal agendas always trump objectivity. They do.
It's true.
If you're not like you do, or you're able to put your personal agenda aside while you're doing your research, which, grad school too was tremendous at teaching me that. If anything I learned at grad school was how to do research and how to do objective research. That's probably the only thing I got out of grad school. I got good grades, but I still don't remember anything of it aside from going to the library. And
my wife says that what I got out of grad school is some very expensive kindling.
And the ability to put MS or MA on a card.
Exactly. Yeah.
But research, I learned how to research, and it was objective research, scientific journals, doing scientific method, probability statistics, not just going to People magazine and saying, this is what. No, you had it. That's taught me objectivity as far. But I don't do even journal. Hey, you're one, brother. Do even journalists have to do that nowadays? Do they know how to research? Are they getting taught the correct ways to research?
There's no, people ask me this fairly often. Like, is there a formal body that licenses you as a journalist? And there isn't. There's not even a common career trajectory. I didn't get a degree in journalism. I got a degree in communications. I would contend, I had a conversation on Twitter recently with some site editors from some other large websites. Hope Sec over at military.com, Howard Altman from Military Times. None of them have journalism degrees. They just, they got degrees in something else. They found their way into journalism. They worked their way up into an editor position. I remember years ago being told not to go to J school, is what journalists call getting a journalism degree, because they said your editor wants you to write the way your editor wants you to write, not the way some school will teach you. But the problem with that is, when you become a journalist, especially in today's day and age, the line is blurry between a blogger and a journalist for a large portion of the internet. And you could be doing incredible journalism on your personal blog. You could be revealing information nobody else has. You could be giving an incredible perspective. So I don't want to. Blog tends to be a kind of a dirty word in the news outlet business. We don't like it when you call our page a blog, right? But bloggers are doing a great deal of journalism out there now, with maybe journalism background, maybe none. And that's part of how the whole media landscape is shifting so fast that what even is a journalist, I guess, is a question we need to be asking ourselves. I mean, I didn't call myself a journalist until just a few years ago. Because I was like, I mean, what am I really? I'm an analyst is what I consider myself. I read, I talk to people, I research, and then I form a position and I relay it more often than not. I do, just an objective journalist write-up from time to time, but that's not where my passions lie. I want to dig into what's wrong with the F-35 and figure that out, and so to be honest with you, I guess the question is, what the hell is a journalist? And when someone tells you that they're a journalist, I would contend that there is a motive behind every message, including that one, right? So people have a perception of what journalism means. And so when you say I'm a journalist, it's usually because you're trying to play on that perception. You want them to think something of you, right? The same way when I introduced myself as a Marine, it was because I was like, I want you to know I'm a badass. This is how we're opening, And when I tell people I'm a writer, which is kind of how I identify as a writer, when I tell people that, people don't know what to make of it, But that's kind of good. I wish we had that same vibe about journalism. It's such a broad spectrum. When someone tells you they're a journalist, they could mean that they are really opinionated on Twitter, or they could mean that they write a column for the New York Times. And I'd contend that you should read the content to decide whether or not there's value, rather than just going, oh shit, the New York Times. Okay.
Honestly, I think a lot of us very rarely, unless you're far, far, far left, hear New York Times anymore and go, it has that respect that it used to. It doesn't for me anyway, and that doesn't mean. And guys, I'm not everybody thinks I'm a Trumper because of the Benghazi. I'm not, guys, at all.
Well, you're just a guy.
I'm just with my own little opinions, which you far left people like, fuck you, Tana. I don't want to hear your shit anyway. But the Times has done that to themselves by putting stuff out that when it was fact checked didn't come through correctly, or sensationalism, or the clickbait, which you don't want to see that in the Wall Street Journal, and you don't want to see that in the New York Times. At least in my opinion, as a American, I don't want to see that in the Journal or the Times. And you don't see that. No. Maybe I'm wrong, guys. Help me out. I don't tend to ever see a lot of clickbait stuff in the WSJ, in the Wall Street Journal.
I would agree with that. I'd agree with that.
But I don't read it every day either because I don't have a lot of stocks and bonds and stuff.
Yeah. My biggest concerns about investment are whether or not my wife took the credit card.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's my bad. But you do see that in the Times, or maybe it's just more spotlighted because the Times also now is so far left that the right goes after it all the time. Just like the left goes after the NRA, the right goes after the New York Times a lot. So
right? Those might both be true, right? I tend to get really frustrated when I see a sensationalism or clickbaity headlines in any outlet, but especially in these outlets that are supposed to be sort of the guiding light for this industry. This year I was elected to the board for the Military Reporters and Editors Association. And my platform that I ran to get on the board was literally just, let's set the example. The idea that the work we're doing every day is informing the overall discourse in our country. It might not feel like it. When I write a big story for me, maybe a few 100,000 people will read it this week, which is a big deal for me. But it's a drop in the bucket.
As it should be.
It's a drop in the bucket, big picture, right? 330 million Americans. There's a great deal of media being consumed out there. But, you take that one big story of mine, and you take that big story from Stavros, one of our best writers, and that big story from Hope over at military.com. And these things add up to a huge portion of the American public and to a big part of the fabric of our culture and how we interact with one another. The same thing with what you do online matters, whether you're the editor of the New York Times or a bus driver, scrolling through your phone in between dropping off kids. The way you interact with things online dictates the way that we interact with one another, as a country. So I think that we are in a pivotal time for our country. And I love the fact that I'm seeing more and more guys like you who are like, yeah, and I'm trying to be on the right side of that. I think that's how it fixes. That's how it changes.
That's the only way. And that's what podcasts are becoming more and more the go-to, because first of all, it's not just a quick 4-minute interview. I hated going on the news and trying to get what you need to say in like 4 minutes. And because what they're trying to do in those 4 minutes or those quick little interviews, they're trying to get you to say something because you're trying to think quickly, but you might say something that, oh my gosh, we got him. We got something great. Like, hey, what do you want to, after Obama said, hey, Benghazi was a conspiracy, what did you want to what did you think? Well, I wanted to choke him. Holy shit, we got you. Not everybody knows it was 5 a.m. in the morning and I'm trying to get up. I'm waking up.
Headline, Tonto, I want to choke Obama.
I want to, but what did you feel? That's what I felt. And that was up there. But again, that's what that does to you. And could we have gone into it on a podcast even more? Yeah, we could have. What I wanted is like, let's put us in the ring. Let's put us in the ring. All right, let's go out. I want to choke him out. Do you want to say something like that? But that's what the news does to you.
That's a great example of just like that. You suck the context and the nuance out of something, and you make a product that people can share with all the outrage that their heart desires.
It's still one of the top things if you search Chris Tomlin product. It's still up there, right in the first page. And I still laugh at it. I don't feel ashamed at it at all. I know what I feel. But just like
the issue at hand, you're a complicated and nuanced guy. You're allowed to have all sorts of opinions and positions on things. And the fact that people want to file you into a cookie cutter political position or a cookie cutter military position or a cookie cutter podcast guy position, we memeify everything, right? We boil everything down into something that we can retweet, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's why people gave us, actually colleagues of ours who I respect, but I'm being honest, they gave me and Chris some shit when they said, you're going to have Alex Jones on.
Oh, yeah, remember that?
But to me, it's like, but to me,
if your beliefs are so weak that they can't be challenged, then what are they really based on?
And also, when you were talking about as long as people present themselves as who they are, I think in this day and age, anyone who consumes Alex Jones knows that Alex is a conspiracy-geared guy. He would call himself that. He does find conspiracy theory and things. Many of them have been right. Many of them have been wrong. But I don't think anyone looks at Alex and says, this is a completely objective source of news. It's not, but he's talked about a lot of things that turned out to be true and that weren't covered by mainstream outlets.
Well, I mean, he was the guy that proved the Bohemian Grove thing was real.
Yes, went into the
Again, I'm not saying that I'm a big supporter of Alex Jones. I think he's entertaining as hell.
Of course, and I loved talking to him. To me, that was like a dream come true.
Yeah.
But I agree. This whole idea of media outlets now saying you can't talk to this guy is actually a pretty new thing, because I remember
and it's so
when
silly.
CNN.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I remember when CNN would have, believe it or not, I mean, they would have David Duke on, who was a white supremacist, and they would talk to him. And Larry King has interviewed like Ahmadinejad, and that was news because at least you heard from them what their positions were. And now it's like a guy like Alex Jones is completely banned from all platforms. You will never see him on CNN again. You will never see him on Fox News. He's not on.
But he will
YouTube,
come on about
Twitter.
We'll always have him on here, though.
Yeah, but this is I don't agree with that at all. Of just deplatforming someone because their views are deemed unacceptable by the powers that be. I think that is complete bullshit, and we are learning right now that certain stories, right, with like the COVID pandemic, with the Wuhan lab that were censored, turned out to be true. There was also a lot of stuff that turned out to be completely fake, but there were things that turned out to be true that people were banned from platforms.
Culturally, we weren't allowed to have the conversation. And it makes me think of my daughter. I have a 3-year-old daughter who's my whole world. I'm not a helicopter dad. I am like a tilt rotor aircraft dad. I am like hovering over her and jumping to crazy conclusions at all times. But, protecting her is important to me. I'm a big self-defense guy. We've had a few bad things happen, in my house over the years. So I want to make sure that my daughter is safe. And the way that I make sure that she's safe is not by shielding her from the idea that bad things can happen. The way I make sure that my daughter is safe is by equipping her to handle bad things when they happen. And the same way, we don't improve the discourse of our nation or our culture by shielding people from unpopular views or by views that we see as objectively wrong. Because what you're really doing is you're only exposing them to one thing, and the natural result is to kind of reject that. We don't like to be told what to think and what to do, right? Instead, when I was growing up, my dad watched a lot of Phil Donahue. And
I love Phil. I love Phil. I grew up on Phil Donahue. With my parents watching that.
I remember watching Donahue and them having Klan members on. And me, I was a young kid. I grew up mostly in Vermont. You know what I mean? And there was one black guy in my town. His name was Robert, and he used to joke that it must be really boring to be the Klan because they just have meetings and be like, "We got to get Robert." So I wasn't exposed to a lot of minorities or people of different ethnicities than myself. And I remember watching Donahue and him having Klansmen on, and them, personally telling the audience why they were, how they were, why they found the beliefs that they have. And I remember going, oh, these guys are a bunch of assholes. I don't want to be like these guys. I learned more from seeing Ku Klux Klan members espousing their racist beliefs. I learned more about not being racist from that than I would have if you had never shown it to me. Because if you had never shown it to me, I'd be like, oh, nobody's racist. Like I've never seen anybody be racist.
Or having a left wing do their own perspective on what they are and slanting it down, then going down the rabbit hole. Well, it goes all the way down to the North Georgia mountains. How do you come on, man? That's the other side of it is that it can be sensationalized so far that it gets incorrect.
Yes.
Just put the people that are on. Let them talk.
Let's equip the American people to think critically about the stuff that they're exposed to and make their own decisions. And yes, I will readily admit that means some percentage of Americans are going to hold opinions that I find atrocious or stupid, right? If there's anything that I know for sure from being on Twitter, it's that some percentage of people are just... in the Marine Corps, we used to say 10% of you were never supposed to be here. I firmly believe that about all of society. Like we're all held back by the 10% of society that just can't get their shit together and can't get along.
Going back to the Alex Jones comment with Alex, Alex is I know Alex personally. Alex is an extremely nice guy.
I believe
everybody he has his views. He's passionate about it, which I can tell you're passionate. Well, obviously you are passionate. Ian's passionate about his views. Me, sometimes I have, sometimes
that's not. The best way to be, though. That means that you absorb information and establish positions based on that.
But that's also I could tell you there's certain. If it's like an amendment related, you are pretty passionate.
But Alex in himself, that's what people don't know that about. If the ones that don't like him think he's some nut job. He's not. He's a nice, decent, respectful guy. He is one of the only, when I'm on his show, he's one of the few guys that still say, sir. Yes, sir. Gotcha. Holy, that's Alex. And I even told Alex, come on, man. You don't need to call me sir. No, you're sir. Yeah, right. And who does that? And he's supposed to be this asshole, and he's calling, he's the respect that he still has just as a person in the discipline. How many times do you hear sir around the world today? Never.
Rarely.
Or ma'am.
I call my wife ma'am, but I'm brainwashed. It's the only place that you'll hear it.
That's beautiful.
I still say yes, ma'am. She's the OIC in this house.
She is the OIC in charge. I'm glad you brought, because I do like throwing that out about Alex, because I think he has gotten a terrible rap, and I think he's viewed as to a lot of people as just some bad, terrible, and he's not at all. He's tremendous, very respectful of the military, very respectful to I know he is a supporter of the Second Amendment. He's a supporter of the Constitution, period. But just when you get off camera, he's a nice guy. And people don't see that side of him.
This speaks to how important it is that we learn to separate a person from their comments, from even their beliefs. And the reason why I say that's so important is because we're in an era right now where I didn't get Facebook, I think, until maybe I was like 20 or 21. I was older. Facebook, I'm an older guy, right?
Yeah, that was so MySpace was just ending then, or what?
Yeah, I was already in the Marines before Facebook was something I could get, right? And but Lord knows I had a MySpace prior to that. The people who are in the Marine Corps today, they had a Facebook account probably from the time they were 13. We all have this permanent record of all the dumb shit we think. When we're teenagers, when we're in our 20s, when we're in our 30s and 40s. The idea is supposed to be that we keep on learning stuff as we go through this journey, and we become better people, and we establish better positions, and we form our beliefs based on our experiences and what we run into. But right now, we're holding people accountable for a dumb thing they said when they were 19. Alex Jones is a different case. He's a media guy, and people are mad at him for things he said on a show or whatnot.
But the Sandy Hook,
but the same basic idea applies that we have to be able to forgive people for saying things that we don't like. We have to be able to forgive people for even believing things that as a society we find difficult to stomach. The best example I can provide right now is if you were a guy who was a terrible misogynist or a terrible racist, 10 years ago, you still have value to our society as long as you're growing, as long as you're learning from your experiences and participating in our culture. You still belong here. You still have a seat at the table. Yes, if you are an asshole, we should throw you away from the table, sure. But we're going to have to learn to be able to forgive each other for our darker moments, for our worst moments, for our slip-ups, and even our firmly held beliefs that maybe aren't popular. In order for America to be successful in the future, we're not going to be able to say, okay, everybody who votes left can talk and everybody who votes right can't, or vice versa. We have to have a conversation with each other. We don't have to agree on everything, but we've got to agree on some things. I'm a big believer in China is this looming threat on the horizon, and your average American citizen is pretty unaware and ignorant to that because we're so much more interested in warfare at home. And
that's how we toppled government.
Yes,
that is exactly. I have something to say is what you're seeing right now is what our unconventional warfare that we do overseas to other governments to topple them. It's not the battles. It's not coming in. That's after. We destroy the infrastructure first and destroy the psyops
and we're walking right into those information operations.
I know it is. That's why I preach. Hey, either turn it off or listen to both sides. And if you are making a mistake, I admit wholeheartedly that
it wasn't. I'm wrong every day.
If you're able to say that, then people should say, "Hey, you know what? You're right. I forgive you. You shouldn't have done that. Thanks for admitting that." But people today, nowadays as well, I think many out there aren't willing, or they're not strong enough to admit when they're wrong. Yeah. I see that a lot. Like, man, you're not. You can be wrong and still be a CEO of a company. Yep. It's okay to say, "Yeah, you know what? I made a mistake there," because none of us are perfect. We don't. We all make mistakes. But I'm seeing it start to come back around. But during the last 10 years, especially during the Benghazi when I actually started to see behind the curtain of media and so forth, which I had no idea. During that time frame, nobody could ever admit when they were wrong.
Yes.
Nobody could ever admit when
people think that it's going to hurt their career in media. If I adopt a position and then turn out I'm wrong and I admit that, people think that it's going to make them, if anything, for someone like me, it'll make me more apt to follow you, to watch again, to listen again.
It shows integrity. Yeah. It shows integrity, and it shows that you're trying to get the right. Hey, I made a mistake.
Yeah. It's more important to me that you do the right thing than it is that you are right.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, if people email us at battlelinepodcast@gmail.com and say that I got something factually incorrect or Chris got something factually incorrect, and they're correct, like after looking into it, I'll absolutely read it.
We send them a t-shirt.
That's awesome.
Hey, you got us, man.
Yeah, no, it's happened before. Early on. It's been a while, but I have no problem with that.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah, I wanted to get into another thing with you before we,
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. We're getting.
No, it's fine.
I talk in like 8 font. I could fill hours. I just keep rambling.
I know. No, I've been loving this. But you just said just a little bit ago about the looming threat of China, and I know it's something you've written about, especially in aviation. I definitely want to cover some of that because you are someone who's like very well researched on China versus the U.S. in terms of aviation and a lot of other aspects.
Yeah, I started covering China really in depth for Popular Mechanics a few years ago. My first feature for PopMech was an article about just all of the aviation platforms, effectively the fighter jets in particular, China operates, are all stolen, right? China hasn't developed their own jet. Some people argue the J-20. The J-20 is based on F-22 plans that were stolen by a Canadian guy named Su Bin. We gave Su Bin like 3 years in jail for handing China the F-35, the F-22, and the C-130. China's military is massive. China's Navy in particular, people say America has the biggest Navy in the world. We do not by a wide margin. If you take China's Navy, which is deploying destroyers so quickly that they're running out of Chinese cities to name them after. China is right now.
Know that.
Current satellite estimates, if you combine their Navy with their maritime militia and their maritime Coast Guard, they have 770 ships in the South China Sea. The United States has 293 vessels in all in the entire planet. And it's important for people to remember that we can't dedicate the entirety of the U.S. Navy or the Air Force or the Marine Corps to any one conflict because we have global obligations. We're a stabilizing force. And shipping lanes all around the world in places like the Suwalki Gap, where there's a real threat of Russia in the Baltics. If you were to pull American forces out of all of these places, we would have way more problems on our hands. We couldn't take all of the U.S. military and throw it at China.
Is the U.S. military doing anything about it, stepping up production, ramping up, or are we still just filling ourselves with drama and Twitter and all that instead of actually doing
Right now, we're mostly just arguing about it, which is very frustrating. Now, the biggest, I would say, like at the tactical level, where tactical meets strategic, the issue with America trying to deter China in the South China Sea in particular. So the South China Sea is a huge spread of the Pacific Ocean where like a third of all global commerce is shipped through. It's also the lifeblood of maybe a dozen nations in terms of oil, fish, natural resources. So China has just decided unilaterally that the entire South China Sea belongs to them, even though there are maybe 9 overlapping claims that are internationally recognized. 250 miles from your beach, from your coast, is your economic exclusion zone. Anything that belongs in there, or anything that's in there, belongs to you. The fish, the oil, the natural gas, that belongs to you. China disagrees. So, for instance, they laid siege to a bunch of Vietnamese oil platforms not long ago with their fishing ships. They just surrounded it with boats that look like fishing vessels and wouldn't allow any supplies to come in until they starved the Vietnamese out. When they fled, Chinese troops just climbed on the oil platform, and now those are Chinese oil platforms. And that's exactly how China is approaching the Pacific. So we're doing freedom of navigation operations, which is basically sailing our warships through what they claim is their waters, just to prove that we don't recognize their claim. England is doing it. Australia is doing it. More and more countries are jumping in, right? Japan, obviously. But the biggest threat that we face is really China's hypersonic anti-ship missiles, which is one weapon that has changed the entire, game in the Pacific. And the reason being is that a hypersonic weapon is a missile that travels in excess of Mach 5. It travels so fast, we have no means of intercepting it. Our best missile defense systems cannot pick it up, establish a trajectory, and then launch a kinetic interceptor anywhere near in time, right? So, if China were to launch one of these hypersonic anti-ship missiles at a U.S. aircraft carrier that was in range, we would have no way of stopping it. There's the question of whether or not they have a good targeting apparatus that can really make that,
Yep.
Even a big carrier is a small target against a big ocean. But if they hit it, they're going to sink a carrier. And we do not have the industrial infrastructure to replace an aircraft carrier. We're seeing it with the Ford right now, right? So the range on that weapon system is about 1,000 miles. Our F-35Cs, our Fa-18 Super Hornets, even the new Block 3 ones, we're talking a combat radius of maybe 680 to 700 miles. What that means is that we cannot put an aircraft carrier within range of China without risking China sinking that aircraft carrier.
Wow.
And those carriers are not just our most potent form of force projection, that's how we wage war in other places around the world.
Yeah.
So right now we're looking at a very real situation where China's got this big stick that we don't have a means to counter. And so the Navy and the Marine Corps in particular are doing a bunch of stuff to try to offset this advantage. The MQ-25 Stingray is a refueling drone. It was originally going to be a UCAV, but we needed more range. So we started building carrier-capable drones. The new Block 3 Super Hornets have conformal fuel tanks. That's going to add a bit more range. But to be honest, we still don't have a solution for this problem. So right now, we're staring down the barrel of a new Cold War with a country that's got the largest standing military in the world. It's got the largest Navy in the world. And on top of all that, as Tonto was pointing out earlier, they have a huge, elaborate, and incredibly successful information operations campaign going on right here in the United States that involves everything from World of Warcraft to the NBA to the new Top Gun movie.
Unbelievable.
And John Cena apologized
to John
China.
Cena.
I'm sure you guys saw that.
That apology, it sounded like he had been filmed, killing a bunch of kittens.
What bothers me within the 2A community, I see it still, even with some of the people that sponsor my Battle Line tactical training company, all this with the virus that may or may not have been weaponized, maybe, who knows, but it still originated there.
Yep.
With this going on with the military, and this military where they're still doing some low down dirty things within the military, we're still buying and utilizing their products. We're still getting things made out of the country. This is within not just the 2A community. We're supposed to be the guys who are like, F China. China,
American
eat shit.
made.
But here's my optic. Where's it made? China.
I bought it off Amazon.
If we can't do it, and this is as a 2A in the 2A community, if the 2A community, the Second Amendment community, the gun community can't shit can everything made in China and start finding other places to make our gear for us, how can we talk shit about the rest of the country when everybody else is doing stuff in China? When that to me pisses me off within the Second Amendment community, within the gun community, is that everything that we call people being hypocrites for, we're doing it on this side. We're doing it.
I'm really glad.
We're gonna leave.
It was like 2 years ago that I realized that I'm a budget gun guy. You know what I mean? I love my guns, but I can never talk my wife into letting me pay $1,000 for a set of optics,
Yeah.
But it was like 2 years ago that I was like, well, where the hell am I getting this thing from? So I made the shift, but it was because I had that realization. I was like, I got a cabinet full of Chinese stuff.
I know it's all from and if it bothers me just because it's that part of the community, all this ex-military, all this veterans, all these people that are supposed to be fighting against what China is, and especially nowadays, but we're still having all of our gear.
Yes.
Or even the majority of it prefabricated, made in China,
and I think
clothing.
Part of it is that we assume China is kind of like America in that these companies may not be affiliated with the Chinese government. The same way, when I buy a new Glock, I don't assume that this money's going to the American government. That's not the case in China. In China, everyone is tied to the government, especially if you're financially successful.
And it always comes down, at least within the gun community, it does. And you guys can hate me if you want. I could lose every sponsor I had. It doesn't. I'm going to say it right now. It comes down to them making money.
Yes.
What is the cheapest way I can put this product out? And it has nothing to do about integrity. What is the cheapest way I can put this product out and make the most money? Well, it's still China. China is the cheapest way I can have things pre-made.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
And it pisses me off, and I feel like a hypocrite a lot of times. I do. And there's a lot of stuff that we have moved away, or sponsors that have come to Battle Line, and I've said the last week there's been 4, and where's it made? China. No, not doing it. No, sorry. No. And it's good. And these companies are actually big. I'm not going to say them. You guys can figure it out for yourself. These are big name companies that would really help Battle Line out. but you have to stand somewhere, and that's just to me. If I can't say no, I'm not doing anything with Chinese made articles. How can I tell anybody else?
Yeah, no, it makes great sense. And for those of you who think that maybe we're just being paranoid because I've written about this a couple of times. Hollywood's a great example of the power of China's influence. Russia has influence, and they use a thing called reflexive control as Russia's approach to foreign influence. But it's usually really heavy-handed. It looks like Twitter trolls. A lot of times you can tell. I mean, I get a lot of hate mail in Russian, but from covering the Su-57 especially. But China's influence comes disguised as big bags of money, and people are a lot more receptive to a big bag of money than they are to people just kind of being mean to them online. And that's the reason why China is so powerful. Like Marvel, I'm like Ian mentioned, I'm a big comic book nerd.
Me too, brother. I just found some old Spider-Man comics when I was unpacking. I wish it was that Spider-Man that's worth $1 billion.
Yeah, of course not, right? Yeah.
It's not that one, but yeah.
But the MCU is a perfect example of a huge American, business venture that we don't realize how hamstrung it is by China. Doctor Strange, when it came out, I remember the backlash for them whitewashing the character of the Ancient One, who was a Tibetan monk in the comics and in the old cartoons, and was played by an old white lady in the movie.
Yep.
Tilda Swinton, if you're listening, I'm sorry I called you an old white lady. My wife loves you.
If Tilda Swinton's listening to Battle Line podcast,
who knows? Maybe she's
awesome.
bad. Yeah.
Oh my Lord! We want you on the show. You're tremendous.
She was awesome in Constantine.
Constantine. She was the Archangel, man. Gabriel. She was awesome.
But so Marvel ate all this bad press for whitewashing that character when the truth was China literally told them we won't let you release this movie in our market if you have a Tibetan character. Because we have complicated relations with Tibet, i.e. claim to own them, and we won't let you present a Tibetan character in such a powerful way. So they changed it to a white lady. And
I think the even crazier one.
I didn't even know that. I'll be honest.
It happens all the time.
Wow. I know Alex knows about this one, Chris. Did you know about this one? I mean, what film is more American? Chris, you're still there, right?
Yeah, I'm here. Okay. I'm here. My chair was squeaking, and I thought
it's all good.
I'm just showing my ass right now.
But I mean, what film is more American than mention. Top Gun? I was going to say than Top Gun because I know you've heard about this. Have you heard about this one, Chris?
No, I haven't.
Oh man!
So
tell me. I haven't.
The jacket that Tom Cruise wears in the first Top Gun has a Taiwan patch.
It's got two of them
in the trailer. What, two of them? You said? So 2 Taiwan patches in the trailer for Top Gun 2. No more Taiwan.
It's the same jacket
because the Chinese
same jacket, but they pulled the patches off and replaced them with
such horseshit. Dude.
I can give you an even crazier one. In one of the recent Mission Impossible movies, they made the studio go back and use CGI to remove the clotheslines that were visible on top of buildings in Beijing, because the Chinese government did not want foreign nations to know that if you live in a skyscraper in Beijing, you still probably don't have a dryer. So they made them spend tens of thousands of dollars to erase the clotheslines from the shot, or they wouldn't let them release it. Which we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars is what they're making, and it's the second largest movie market in the world. Red Dawn was another good example. The remake, they filmed the entire Red Dawn remake with China as the bad guy. But then when the movie hit theaters, it was North Korea, which was a lot less believable.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I know. I mean, I saw
You probably saw the trailers, and in the trailers, it was China.
It was China. I didn't even think about that. I just watched it again a couple weeks ago. It was on when I was in a hotel. It's not as good as the original.
No, it's not. It's not. No,
still bad. But I did. I had no idea. I thought it was always North Korea.
After the entire filming and post-production had wrapped, they went back with 3 production teams and changed every flag to a North Korean flag.
Wow.
Overdubbed the language to Korean language, replaced the patches on the uniforms, all through CGI. And not because they intended to release this movie in China. They didn't. It was because Chinese investors into the studio were pushing back on the idea of China being presented as the bad guy. So here we have China, whose government is literally positioning itself. And I want to be clear earlier, China has a huge navy, but it is a green water navy. They're not global. But China is positioning itself to try to dethrone the United States as the diplomatic and economic center of the world. And if they have to do that militarily, they will. They're certainly building with the intent of being able to if they have to. But here in American culture, China is almost always presented as the good guy, where in America, we really like to hate on ourselves. We really like...
We do now.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we do now.
You will find it is easier to find positive sentiment about China than it is about America among a lot of Americans. And that, don't get me wrong, parts of that may well be of our own doing because, we're managing our own culture.